Welcome back to the SAPS podcast. This is season 1, episode 6 of The Leftovers, entitled Guest. As always, I'm joined by my two illustrious co-hosts, Ant.
How's it going, everyone?
And Phil.
You're right, everyone. I'm so looking forward to talking about this episode. It's so good.
It's going to be potentially the best one yet, but we'll see by the end of it. Maybe it'll be the worst, and we'll cancel the podcast. You never know. It could go either way.
You know, just a bit of foreshadowing here. Considering I am the A in SAPs, I like to think of myself as the kind of the meat to the sandwich. You guys are like kind of the bread. You know, a bit plain, a bit stale by yourself, but you know, you add the filling and you got the whole package. That's going to be my points today. I'm going to fit ever so nicely within the foundation set by you guys.
I disagree. Sorry, go on.
I was just going to say that the sad reality is that Ant isn't actually even part of the sandwich.
No.
He's the sandwich bag.
I was thinking he was more like the lettuce, to be honest. That's kind of how I pictured Sam being the frame, you know, the S. So you're the buns, but we need that there to give it structure. Then you got the shit lettuce, you know, your claim of one of your 5 a day, weak nothing. Then you got me, who's like, you know, the thick, juicy meat. And then you got a bit more Sam at the end. That's how I see this.
Juicy meat.
Phil bringing his thick, juicy meat into the party. And on that note, as always, our spoiler policy is that there'll be no future spoilers, so we'll just be spoiling this episode, episode 6, and all the previous episodes. So, without further ado, let's get right into the synopsis for episode 6, Guest. So we open with Nora, and as we'll find out going through it, this is her episode, just like episode 3 was Matt's, and she's conducting another one of her departure interviews that gives out the payout to people that have lost someone in the departure. So she's asking some, again, quite uncomfortable questions about people's habits, which we'll see a few times in the episode, and she's pressing somebody who's clearly very uncomfortable for clear yes or no answers about whether this guy's husband ever tried to commit suicide, and it's just all around a little bit awkward, I must say. And what did you kind of react initially to this first scene?
Yeah, it seems weirdly like Nora enjoys the power of the interviews, just like in one of the previous ones. It seems like she doesn't come across as empathetic as she possibly could, and yeah, it's really hard to kind of align yourself with Nora in this opening.
Yeah, she just seems... You're right, she's pushing him, and the other person's clearly uncomfortable. I got the impression she treated it much more, perhaps not so much in a position of power, but it felt like it was just a business as usual question. You know, considering...
Yeah, I got that. It was like professional.
Yeah, it was very, very dispassionate. And that's a word I'm going to keep coming back to throughout this episode, is dispassionate. Oh. But you know, it felt very, you know, there was no kind of any attempt at empathy, no attempt at kind of, you know, potentially easing off the questions a little bit to help the other person. It was just yes, no. Did he do this? Did she do that?
I suppose if she was defending herself, she would say that, because in the line of work, then, you know, they're using the answers to try and find patterns in there. She's just trying to... The best way to conduct that interview is to be kind of robotic and that kind of thing in there. And it's quite interesting as well that she does kind of come across like that, and we've all kind of picked up on that she's a little bit cold and all that kind of thing because of what she kind of gets... Not accused of being, but what her, I don't know, it seems like her boss kind of suggests that she may be doing, you know, later in the episode, and getting people to empathise with her when we get to question 121. So it's interesting that, you know, that paints the opposite picture to kind of what we're discussing here.
What I would have liked is a bit of a reason, if it ever explained why she got into that line of work, because to me it just seems... bizarre. You know, it's not what I'd want to. It's not something I'd want to do. So I'd
did she have a recruitment agency? Headhunt. She lost 3. She'd be good.
Yeah, she'd understand. Yeah.
Thing is, there's lots of psychology in this episode, isn't there? And so maybe, you know, this isn't in it at all, but just, you know, going off my own thoughts, maybe she thinks if she can try and own it a bit and try and not control the thing, but maybe if she just thinks if she did another job and almost, like going through life trying to pretend like the departure never happened, that's just not going to work. So she needs to kind of, have it be a thing in her life, which kind of goes a little bit against, I suppose, what we've seen in the earlier episodes, where when people are recognising her for, what happened in the departure, that she seems to not like that. So there's already in this first scene quite a bit of conflict going on.
Yeah.
So in the next scene, we see Nora, who... I don't know, like, to say it out of context just makes it sound really weird, but she's basically just parked right by a school kids' playground, and he's just staring at the kids and the teacher with them. And I thought it was quite interesting that when she makes eye contact with the person who I presume is the teacher, most people, if they kind of saw that the other person saw them, would kind of look away and break off, but Nora doesn't. She just stares right back at them. And I think, Phil, you had quite an interesting little capture.
Yeah, I thought so. I'm assuming that the person she's looking at is the teacher that her husband had an affair with, or that she finds out the husband had an affair with. That's what I'm taking away from that scene. It's never said, but I'd be surprised if it's anything else.
That's what I thought exactly. I thought that was fairly obvious, to be honest.
Well,
I mean,
wasn't
only
obvious,
if you,
obvious enough for me.
After the
I
third
guess,
watch,
if you if you study all the episodes, it's fairly obvious. But I mean, there's probably that, Phil, but also coupled with the fact that, and it's probably a stretch, but just looking at the kids maybe just reminds her of her own, perhaps. I don't know. That might be a bit of a stretch.
It could be a whole pack. You're right. I thought predominantly it was just the fact it's the teacher was my main thing, but you're right. It could be that also she's lost her children. There's also a slight connection there as well.
I think the fact that she doesn't break off when she makes eye contact basically shows that Nora probably feels like she hasn't got a lot to lose, and that is something that I'll touch upon as we go through the episode. But there's quite a lot of times she gets herself into dangerous things and keeps going. So she obviously
doesn't give a
value her life that
Yeah.
highly.
It feels like she's trying to confront something, but it's just hasn't got the thing to confront, if that makes sense. Like, it feels like she's, wants to shout or argue with something, but doesn't quite have the means to do it.
Yeah.
Sure.
Well, that's it. Imagine the conflicted feelings of your husband has departed, so not only that, but then you find out that he's cheated on you. And then, obviously, you'd want to confront him about him and ask why and all that, and you can't do that. It just adds another layer on top of it, and she's just really been through the ringer with this, man. Like, fucking hell. But, so next we see her in the supermarket, and when she goes home, she's basically gone to the supermarket and just restocking things that were already in her house. And it's basically she's restocking all the items that were there for when her family departed. So she buys the exact same cereal, the exact same milk, puts it in exactly the same place. Doesn't replace the last bit of kitchen roll. It's clearly Nora would like to present herself as doing okay, but she's not. She's obviously still struggling with this, as you would. What do you reckon about that?
Yeah, it's a harrowing scene, isn't it? The fact that she can't replace the kitchen roll and she replaces the cereals and things just shows that she can't let go. And it's got a strong link with the Steven Wilson song Routine that I referred to a few episodes back. My interpretation is not that she thinks she'll come back, it's more just holding on, and it's her way of remembering them. So, Phil, what do you think on this?
I thought it was possibly a way of remembering them and keeping them alive, but I still think the biggest thing for her is that she's not moved on, and she's almost waiting for life to go back to what it was, if that makes sense. Like, she's not, as she talks about with the author later on, but to me at the moment it just seemed like she was waiting, almost hoping everything goes back to where it was, and just then continues, if that makes sense. She's not looking forward to anything, she's not trying to move on herself, she's waiting for it to go back.
It's like the man himself, Holy Wayne, says later in the episode. It's just that semblance of hope.
Yeah. Phil, it was reminiscent of a food shop that we did in the early days when we lived together, not quite getting the essentials.
Yeah, not.
fucking
I
idiots.
missed that. Oh, that was. I should have starved in my first year living by myself. Malnutrition at best.
So Nora then hires Angel to come round, and we find out why she's got that gun that we saw in the earlier episodes. So she puts on a bulletproof vest, and she gets Angel to shoot her. And again, Amy, when they were discussing it in, I think it wasn't episode 3, that was Matt's episode, so probably episode 2. But Amy's kind of got it right, that she's, doing this kind of thing. She's got that gun so she can feel the pain and kind of feel something again, but she just wouldn't have been able to predict exactly how that's going down. One thing that occurred to me, this might be a bit of a stretch, is maybe that she can, I don't know, feel like she's going to the brink, like getting shot, and you see that she seems to be, temporarily unconscious, but then kind of wakes up. So, like, going to the brink and then coming back. So, like, how she potentially hopes her family will come back, after being gone for a while. I don't know. Like I say, it's a stretch. But what have you got to add, Phil?
So I wasn't sure if this is so much that she wants to feel pain or remember that she's alive. But the one thing I was thinking about with this scene was because she talks about because Angel even goes, oh, but what if I miss? And she goes, oh, don't worry, you won't, but what if I miss? So she's not so much, she's obviously not worried for her own welfare, and I'd wondered if maybe it's a bit of a stretch too far, but I'd wondered if was almost hoping that she would miss, if that makes sense. Because if she then missed, it's not suicide, it's an accident, and that she can then move on with her family. Maybe I'm looking into it too deep or stretched too far, but it's not the first time she's done it, and she's, in no way, shape or form worried if she lives or dies. There's no concern.
Yeah. No, that's a good point. It's an interesting way of looking at it. Like, I didn't go that far, but I could definitely see where you're coming from. She, it's kind of like a win-win. If she gets hit and survives, then that's job good, and if she misses, then the pain's over, perhaps. She might have that way of looking at things. The way I interpreted it was, well, I guess it's quite open. Does she want to feel more alive? Does she want to feel dead? Does she want to feel closer to those that have gone? Does she just want a bit of a thrill? It's not clear. I mean, she doesn't really say. There is a lot of symbolism to do with heaven in this scene. So the sex worker is called Angel. The song playing in the background is Angel of Death by Slayer. And it, again, just links with my favourite element of the whole show, the kind of imagery and symbolism of a greater power, whether that be destiny or some sort of religious force. That stuff was definitely done intentionally by the showrunners, although it doesn't immediately slap you in the face. When you add it all together, it's quite interesting to think about.
Yeah, that's it. It's those little details, isn't it, with this program that, even say if that was something in real life, you could easily just be like, oh, it's a coincidence, and that's kind of how the program makes you feel sometimes. But then when you add it all together, kind of like we're trying to do, and you're like, no, there seems to be something going on here, but there isn't a clear answer. It's that kind of frustrating kind of thing. So this is jumping ahead a bit, but when Nora goes to the conference and there's people protesting outside saying, we want answers, that's like quite meta for like the audience, for how the showrunners are presenting this. It's like they're the gods of this program, and they're not giving us the answers, and we want them like the people want answers from a real god. I mean, that's some brilliant insight from me there. Let's move on.
Stick to being the buns.
I don't think that's too bad, actually. I think I'm being harsh for myself.
That was a bread point. That was a bread point. It wasn't quite a juicy meat.
Ant's been coming through with those iceberg points so far. So anyway, in the next scene, Nora's down in court, and she's getting a divorce from her husband. Interesting little detail is that the judge says to her that if the departed return, then the decision is still binding. I thought that's just an interesting bit of kind of world building there. And then she runs into Kevin again, and he's getting his divorce from Laurie too. And we get some awkward, but still, like, you know, quite flirty interactions from these two guys. You know, there's definitely some sort of tension in the air. I'll let you figure out what kind of tension I'm referring to. But Kevin is in this scene, so I'm sure you know. So, Ant, anything to say about this little scene?
Yeah, initially thought it was quite cold and emotionless in the courtroom, but thinking about it, you know, the legal professionals aren't invested in the case. They just want this one sorted, don't they? It was definitely an interesting point talking about them coming back. So they, you know, from a legal standpoint, they still are entertaining the idea they might come back. And I guess why wouldn't you? Because there hasn't been a explanation for why they go. So I guess they could come back. Nora definitely looked like she doesn't quite know how to act with people. You know, when she says fuck your daughter, you know, it was a pretty messed up thing to say, although I do think his daughter's quite annoying, but that's not really the point. I don't really think she meant it though. She probably just hasn't really had that level of interaction recently. I mean, you know, her head's clearly not in the right place with her routine that we've seen so far in the episode. So I'll give her a pass on that.
If she would have said "fuck the twins," she would have been on point.
Absolutely.
Anyway,
Whoa.
what you saying, Phil?
Well, I agree. She kind of goes from 0 to 100 in under a second. Like, oh, I've got a conference I don't really want to go to. Do you want to go to Miami? What? Do you even know this guy's surname? Like, I get it. I think Sam and I in complete agreement that we'd run away with Kevin. You know, without a moment's thought, obviously. But that's still quite strange for her to kind of suddenly go from, oh, I don't really want to go to, let's go to Miami. Like, what was she expecting him to say? Kind of, you know, it was very strange, very no kind of breaks, no kind of filter or anything. The other thing I thought was quite interesting in this, actually, it's one of the things I'll say before going, I like when she leaves and Kevin turns away. I love the fact you see his eyes widen slightly, like it's really small, very subtle, but it's like a, you know, God, she's crazier than me kind of thing. Like, what just happened? For someone like Kevin, I quite liked that little bit of detail there. Felt very real.
Yeah, there's that little bit of comedy there with Kevin, isn't it? Like, you know, you just think if you could just not be a nutcase, you'd be a great guy.
Yeah, exactly. But something else as well, I think it's the first time they introduced the idea in this episode, is when they ask, well, do you want to go back to your maiden name? And she goes, no, I'd like to remain Nora Durst. Again, for me, that it shows how strong how important identity is in this episode to her. You know, even though her husband's cheated, she still wants to keep the name because she still wants to be Nora Durst. She wants to be who she was.
That's a good point.
Yeah, that's it.
That's probably 2 cc's of thick, juicy bun. But meat, sorry.
So we then see Nora at work where she's talking to the guy who, as I said earlier, I presume is her boss, and they're talking about the kind of the questions that she asks during these interviews. And interesting, we don't know what the question is yet, but he says to her that every single interview that she's ever done, question 121 is always answered yes. And he kind of infers that maybe the reason that would be the case is because maybe she's kind of putting people at ease, or, you know, trying to get to know them by telling them her story, and so that's maybe influencing their answer. But she definitely defends herself, doesn't she, Phil?
Yeah, she's quite clear. No, it's not anything that I'm doing wrong, and I don't think in any of the interviews we've seen that she ever relates to her own experience, does she? Does she?
No.
Cool, just checking.
No. We've never seen the evidence for it, but I think, you know, there is something with Nora where there's, as we've already spoken about, the kind of what she gives off to other people is a lot different to what's going on underneath. So maybe what she's giving off to us, the audience, is, you know, there's more going on there.
Possibly. What I did kind of I kind of smiled and laughed to myself because he goes like, maybe you're, relating or putting them at ease. And I was thinking, have you met her? Like, at what point do you think she's been doing that so far?
Yeah, she's pretty intense, isn't she?
Yeah, exactly. It's a bit like, I don't think you know your employee there, to be honest. But
what you got to say on this, Ant?
Just to echo the point that it's probably the way that Nora's making us feel in the interview, or she's deliberately marking the papers, not truthfully to either fit her own worldview or distort the statistics. So it's one or the other, isn't it, really?
Mm.
Anything to add, Phil?
Or a big coincidence,
As you say, it does seem odd that everyone would say yes to that. Like, I don't know how many of these interviews she's done, but in hindsight, now I think about it, actually, that is a very strange that every single person would have that reaction. So I wonder if maybe you're right. Maybe she has just been marking it the way that she'd marked her experience. I don't know, but just something that just occurred to me. Because it does seem that odd that yeah, exactly. When
teachers have to
grades.
grade mock papers and it reflects back on them. Yeah, that's an A.
Yeah, absolutely. But it does seem odd that everyone's come back on the same thing with the same response as she put for hers. And also, again, it's just slightly odd that in a world where everyone's feeling really drab, sad, and no one seems to be moving on, how everyone seems to think, they've gone to a better place. There's no kind of concept of being happy that someone may have gone to a better place. If that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, the way that the world is kind of presented, you could definitely see, it's not a leap to think that everybody living in this world would answer no to that.
Yeah.
So that's a tick in Nora's box, if you'll pardon the pun. Anyway, moving on. So there's a bit of bread for you. Fuck, No, that's more like I don't know.
I consider it more lettuce.
What does no one like on sandwiches?
Well, lettuce, ant.
Yeah, true. Yeah, ant. Just ants in general. Anyway, moving on. So Nora then jets off to the very... just anything, just having a go at ants. That's a winner there. Anyway, moving on. So Nora then jets off to the very exciting sounding, quote, departure-related occupations and practice conference, end quote, in which she's going to be a panellist there. And as we said earlier, there's a protest going on outside from people demanding answers. And as I was watching it, I was just thinking, it's like because we see lots of different types of people there. There's guilty remnant, people from different religious, religious backgrounds, all that kind of thing, some conspiracy theorists, and I was just like, there would be like bare conspiracy theories if the departure happened in real life. As we'll see when we get to the panel. But anyway, anything to say on this, Sam?
Yeah, you can definitely see why there are lots of conspiracy theorists, because nobody knows what happened. We spoke about this before. The scientists can't even come up with anything. You think they'd have something to do with, like quantum physics, or they could have probably come up with something, right? But they've got no idea. Religious leaders have got no idea. And then also something I was thinking about, it would have been interesting for us, the viewers, to see video footage of people actually disappearing. If it was kind of the manner in which they disappeared. I presume it was very much just like a 1 minute they're there, not minute they're not. But if it was like some other kind of way they disappeared, and if, I'm sure some of it was probably captured on video, in the digital age, maybe that would guide some of the conspiracy theorists. It's never really, it hasn't been stated so far, has it, Sam? The kind of manner in which they go. They don't like disintegrate or fly up in the air or anything. They just kind of disappear.
No, nothing as of yet.
I think they intentionally do that, don't they, to kind of give you absolutely no.
They want to.
Yeah, sorry.
They want to keep that mystery there, definitely.
Yeah, I was going to say it definitely has more impact when you don't see them going, compared with something than, say, the Avengers situation. Where when you don't see what happens, it almost makes it a bit more harrowing.
Yeah. And
Phil, do you have anything on this?
No. So I'm picturing... So I assume Thanos hasn't just removed 2% of the population with a click. That would be amazing. You know what a crossover that would be. What a multiverse that would be.
It's almost like I wrote the script.
But I liked how, as you're going through, you have all the different conspiracy theories. So I think you see like the World Health Organization did it. The Pope's not really gone. We saw him he's hiding in the basement of the Vatican. So I like how people are trying to cope with what they perceive as this really big change as some kind of big conspiracy. But what really got me in the scene was when she's walking along and then someone puts a grenade in her hand and pulls the pin. Doesn't say anything, just puts a grenade in her hand, pulls a pin. And you know what? Nora just does not seem to couldn't give less of a fuck. Like, she kind of looks at it.
She don't give a fuck, mate. She don't give a fuck.
She doesn't. She doesn't care. And don't get me wrong. If someone just put a grenade in my hand, pulled the pin, I'm not gonna lie. I wouldn't even if I thought it was a fake one, I wouldn't just drop it on the ground. With everyone else around me, I'd be like, I don't know what to do with this. But she just kind of looks at it, sees it's got a message on it. I can't remember what the message says. And then just drops it. Just goes, oh, okay.
Any time now.
Oh, yeah. And just drops it. I was just there like, wow. That she does not care, like, at all about herself or even possibly others.
Nothing can faze her at this point, isn't it?
Yeah.
But so moving into the conference now. So as she's signing up, we find out someone's picked up Nora's name badge, and so she just gets given a generic guest badge, and she's not happy about that to start with. Like, she insists on getting her own badge. So she then heads into the mixer to search for her badge, and she meets. All I can say is just my man, but he's just got absolutely no game about him whatsoever. Like, he's trying to, I don't know, kind of chat her up, being a bit kind of naturally flirty and all that, but she don't care, man. She don't care. What are you saying, Ant?
It was funny because in my notes as well, I put my man at the conference, trying to chat her up. It on a serious point. It's interesting how she wants to hold on to her identity. Phil said it earlier with the surname. If it was me going to a conference and somebody takes my name, even if I'm a panelist, I'm probably not bothered. I'll just take the guest badge and just introduce myself. But for her, it's so important. She gets irate with the lady at the desk, in the lobby. She doesn't want anything else taken from her. She's lost enough already. She doesn't want to lose this. And then, like you say, Sam, she's got no interest in the actual conference so far. She just wants to find out who does this, and she almost. The way I interpreted it was she almost thinks that there's kind of almost like a higher reason, a higher purpose why somebody's taken it. Like, she's been so unlucky, she's lost 3 people. Whoever's taken it, there's something in play here. There's something going on, and she has to find what's going on. Not to get answers, but almost even if it's just someone to have a go at. She just will not let this thing go.
I must say, and that was a proper meaty point that you said. You only quickly said it, but it was really, really good when you said about how she doesn't want anything else taken from her. That was like a proper,
that was 2 C's thick.
Juicy chicken breast, man.
Oh. Yeah, that was
hand carved turkey, wasn't it?
Yeah, that was a really good point.
Unicorn burger, that one.
To be fair, we're talking about meat, and then I said, "Is chicken meat?"
Yeah,
it's poultry, isn't it?
Poultry, yeah.
I think it's still classed as meat, though.
Oh, mate.
Yeah. I'm not gonna lie. Yeah.
Phil, what do you
just kick me off the podcast?
Yeah, I think that's you can't have a burger without a bun, or else you've just got like a bit of a sloppy mess. But yeah. Again, I completely agree. I think your point there, Ant, if she doesn't want anything else taken from her, was a really good point. If my name badge had gone missing at a conference, I just assume an accident had happened and I wouldn't even give it a second thought. She is driven and thinks something has gone wrong, and it's interesting how she goes from completely disinterested in most things. Doesn't really care about the book, why she's there, anything like that, but immediately becomes very focused on her identity, and it's one of the first times you really see any emotion from her in this episode.
Sure, yeah.
That's how big her identity is to her.
No, absolutely. It's just a constant point. As we've said, just will keep coming up in this episode. So she then follows a lady into the bathroom, Fucking weird. Again, just to start a sentence like that. But she follows a lady into the bathroom. She checks her name badge, but it turns out she isn't the thief of her name badge. But it turns out that at last year's conference, Nora called her a heartless bitch after she mentioned a correlation between pre-teen departures and high sugar cereals. And Nora says that she was having a hard time last year, and the response of, "Well, you're doing so much better now." I'll tell you what, I must say, you feel sorry for Nora and everything that's gone on, in her life and everything, but she got fucking owned there.
Yeah, she did. She got absolutely put in her place.
Is it wrong to say that I really enjoyed the scene in the women's bathroom? I thought, just the fact that
we'll make a little sound bite out of that.
Yeah, I think we should. I think we should keep that.
My political opponents are going to put that on Twitter.
Yeah, I was going to say, don't run for office.
I was just going to say as well, imagine if that situation was, say, someone following Sam into the toilet in the men's bathroom, they'd have to be waiting a long time for them to come out. They'll be there 45 minutes. But yeah, I guess a serious point is that Laura interacts with a lot of people, and it means a lot. Those kind of interactions where she comes across cold. People remember those, but for Nora, she doesn't even remember. She's following people. If I was following someone into the bathroom, I think there'd be something in my brain that would go, maybe do I know that person? But for Nora, she's like, totally unaware of the situation.
Yeah, I was amazed. I was amazed how she could forget someone that she's called a heartless bitch. I feel like that would stick in my memory if I called someone out for making a correlation between whether I've given them Frosties or, whole grain breakfasts and whether they depart or not. So I was surprised that she's forgotten who she is.
Well, that's it, and in what you guys are saying completely shows why Nora's defence of herself. It's not good enough that Nora doesn't remember, because when she says, like, you said about my kids, you would think if someone insulted your kids, you would remember them. But the fact that she doesn't remember it means that she can't have taken it that bloody personally. Like, do you know what I mean? She's just really is. Like I say, all this is completely understandable, but she's a little bit all over the place at times. Like I say, you can see why, but it's definitely true. So then Nora, I think she's just going up to her room, but she gets dragged to a party by my man from earlier, who just, to be fair, thinks he's an absolute G. But you know what, she does stay and has some drinks, and then she ends up popping some pills, and everyone's having a good time. There's, half an orgy going on, and my man's just trying to get on it, but he's none too successful. What are you saying, Phil?
Again, I was kind of surprised at this. I'm not sure if I've been going to the wrong parties or if they say it's a lot more about me, but all the parties seem to be pretty hedonistic. Cause you've got the drugs, you've got the orgy, you've got all sorts going on, and I don't even know if
it's not. Yeah, it's not one of Phil's classic board game parties. The Clask Championship.
You love it. You absolutely love it.
I forgot about Clask.
we need to get Clask on the go at some point, boys. But
it's coming back, boys.
Maybe that should be the sponsor for this episode, Clask. Get a Danish game on the go. Have you ever seen
the placement?
Yeah. To be fair, have you ever seen the advert for Clask? It's like two men. It's like two Danish men in a sauna or something. It's really weird. If you Google image it.
Moving on.
It's why we love it.
I think there was a point. There somewhere, Phil, you were trying to make.
I was just trying to say how almost outrageous these parties seem to get. Whether you're a teenager or some people at a conference, or suddenly you meet a group of strangers and that's it. You suddenly start taking drugs, drinking. I was quite surprised at how intense the party got.
Yeah, well, that's like a night off for me, mate.
I think you said the same thing from the first party. I think that's literally A quote
so
from episode
consistent.
1. Yeah, exactly. Like lettuce.
is, we'll
Always
have a-
disappointing,
we'll have
but
a
it's just...
We'll have a load of people listening to this soon, like Phil's there going, oh, it's getting pretty outrageous watching it. Like, man, this is fucking minor. You should get down fucking, get down Dorridge on a Saturday night.
Well, if people want to invite me to these rages, I will happily attend.
He just wants a friend. What you got to say, Ant?
I was going to say the party scene was interesting to see people's perspectives on things, and it also gave Nora a chance to let her hair down. So, it was just, when I watched it, I was just like waiting to see what happened next. At this stage in the episode.
So just watching the program. Fucking idiot.
Okay, no, I said it was interesting, and I was just excited to say, okay, well, at this stage they're just drinking and lying on the floor and taking drugs. I just was really interested to see what happens in the rest of the party scene. Not like I'm just like
the deadest point ever made on the podcast. Oh yeah, it was
The limpest
interesting,
of
but
lettuce.
I was just waiting to see what happened next.
in an interesting
Fuck
way.
yeah.
Okay, well, whatever. Moving on.
Gee. Right, yeah, anyway, so Nora finally asks this guy what he does, and he shows her a lifelike doll, and he produces them by taking photos and videos of people who have departed, and they cost 40 grand each, but to be fair, they do look proper convincing. And my man has got a huge market, so with 140 million people gone, someone else do the maths, but that is a big market that he can tap into there. And then he makes his move for Nora, but no dice. She prefers to kiss the dummy instead. So unlucky, all those efforts for nothing. And then she's woken abruptly by security the next morning, I'm guessing it is, who tell her to pack up and leave for destroying hotel property. So any of you guys got anything to pitch in here?
Yeah. I mean, those dolls look proper realistic, don't they? At 40k a pop, I'm not saying I'd get one. The reasons why people would get them as well, I think, could be quite varied, whether it's to bury them or just to have them around the house, or maybe even do romantic things for them, I guess. I guess there's lots of options there. It was interesting to see, I think his name, the blonde guy, to see his pitch, that even though he comes across as a bit of a jerk and a party animal, that deep down, I think he did want to help, and he's not quite the prick you think he is, and he was actually, fairly sincere that he actually believes in what he does. He's not just trying to make a quick buck. Maybe he got emotional over the substances he was taking, but that was my interpretation. Then just a quick point on the security guy rocking the handlebar moustache. You don't see too many of those nowadays.
It was
My
distinct,
man.
wasn't it? I think you're right. It was interesting that he describes himself on 2 occasions as, am I soulless, or do you still think I'm soulless? Do we learn his name? I've not made a note of his name anywhere.
No,
So
he's not
I think
important
so.
enough to know his name.
Yeah, exactly. Well, so it's interesting that he kind of goes, do you still think I'm soulless? So I wonder if that's how he potentially perceives himself, especially she starts making out with the doll version of him rather than the actual man, even though I know the man is married. So that was quite a bold move on Nora's part, to start kissing the doll instead of him.
She's absolutely done him there, but not the way that he wanted. So Nora gets chucked out basically for destroying hotel property, but she goes out, she regroups, fair play to her, she heads back in with the new ID that she's made herself, and she this time makes sure to put the 3 orange legacy stickers on there. She as we've talked about, and sorry, I'm going to kind of steal Ant's point that he's put on there, but identity is just so important to Nora. She wants to be Nora, and she is who she is, and she wants people to know that. Again, sorry, Ant stole your point, but deal with it. It's done. So she gets stopped and questioned by the security again, but she convinces them to go to the panel and to see if there's an impersonator there, and sure enough, yep, there she is. And so the impersonator is a conspiracy theorist, another one, like we've seen earlier, who claims that the questionnaires have been incinerated and that the payments are meant to silence people. So, people are proper believing in that, to do something like that and infiltrate a panel.
I like how So going right back to when she gets picked up by security, I like how she managed to convince like how much empathy they have. I think it's one of the few people that she opens up to about the fact she's lost 3 people, and actually she she knows the odds of them all disappearing off the top of her head, for example. And I think it's the first time you see a real.
That was it. What the odds? 1 in 10,000 or something?
1 in like 148, wasn't it? Something like that.
128,000.
128. Close. What's 20,000 between friends? But I like how that's. I like how that's kind of like the convincing point he has for him. It's not this. I mean, if anyone came to me saying someone's trying to steal my identity at a conference, I'd think they were mad. And I'm surprised that she doesn't have any ID herself, kind of proving who she is. But I like how that's the convincing. Well, she's lost 3 people, so I should, at least give her a chance here, or else I'm just a terrible person. Again, does he also have a mustache? The security guard. I think he has a bit of a walrus mustache, doesn't he?
There's something going on there.
I don't know.
It's really minor, but I'm loving the facial hair.
Mate, this hotel needs to update its facial hair policy. It's not professional.
Exactly. What I also liked was that so the impersonator is a conspiracy theorist who comes out with some claims like the questionnaires are incinerated. I like the fact that we know that's not the case because, for instance, the statisticians have picked up the fact that she's always gets a yes on question 121. If they were just being burnt, no one would have picked that up. And also the fact there's correlations between frosted flakes and people disappearing. So we know that her theories are a bit, well, I say a bit, are completely out there. Someone is actually looking at the results of these questionnaires. At this point, had they discussed why they do the questionnaires? I'm just trying to think of how they go through it.
Well, why they do it is because they're looking for patterns, isn't it?
But
that's why the questions are so random.
They're looking to see if people are eligible or not as well, aren't they? I mean,
they are, because
that's what they frame it as.
Because they're talking about the fact. So in the they're looking to see if people are eligible for it, because insurance companies aren't paying out because officially people haven't died.
Yeah, my initial thought was, why did she just show them her driving license or something? So she's either not thinking clearly or not prepared. But it was clever to go to the printers and get it all sorted, and it shows her determination to find out what's going on. I definitely thought, as I said earlier, that she expected like a huge reason for someone to pick specifically her to impersonate. But obviously the conspiracy theorist just, she just chose a name at random, it seems. There was nothing in selecting Nora Durst. She just selected her at random. So it was a bit of an anticlimax for Nora, and you can kind of tell that in her face when, the conspiracy theorist reveals her thoughts. So yeah, she talks about the Israeli death ray or plasma ray or whatever it is, but there's not much you can interpret off that. But when she talks about the incinerators, there's definitely a link with the previous episode and Gladys, and it just makes you think, is there an element of truth to it, or is she just totally off the rails? It's just something to think about at this point.
Yep, so in the next scene, we're at the bar with Nora, who meets the author of the book that everyone who attended this conference gets. I think his surname's Johansson, if I'm remembering correctly.
Yep.
But he talks to her about his daughter and how, because he lost 4 people in the departure, and he says about how his daughter looked guilty for being happy one day, even years after the departure, and he basically says that, it's okay for people, to feel happiness afterwards, and that, he's wrote this book because he doesn't want people to just feel like they have to be in a perpetual, cycle of pain and misery, and that, we do have to try and move on. Well, how do you kind of react to what he was saying, Phil?
So I think the first thing when you see her again in the bar, you see that she's kind of gone back to being. She's not. It feels like she's a bit rudderless almost. Like she's not got something to focus on. Like getting her identity back, for example. So I quite like how she seems quite. Again, dispassionate. She's lost the passion. She's dispassionate in the initial part of the conversation with him. But what I liked is how, again, the only thing she really clings on to in the conversation with him at the start is back. You know, it's that word. It's not, you know, what happens. It's when things go back, not what's coming next. So it shows she's not moved on, and that's a really, really big thing for her, and that she almost seems to be struggling to accept other people have moved on.
That's it, and she kind of shows that in this next scene, because she just immediately calls bullshit on him, like not even veiled it. She just says bullshit, and she calls him a fraud because he still has his daughter, and so he hasn't lost everything. Where she says she lost everything, and so he doesn't understand. You know what true pain is, and she says like, "What's next? Nothing is next." Which, you know, completely just links in with what Phil's saying, in that, you know, she can't move on. She's almost like, yeah, life has ended. Pretty similar to kind of what the Guilty Remnant kind of, you know, feel really, where it's like, yeah, life is over and there is nothing next. Like what quite a lot of people obviously believe about death in real life. Like, you know, there is nothing. And I think how she feels is how I think most people would feel in her personal circumstances. Like, how can you possibly move on and have a normal life after the departure, especially if you lost your husband and 2 kids? Like, life as you knew it, like I said, has just ended. So yeah, I don't know, it's heavy stuff, definitely.
So yeah, I thought it was a great scene. I thought it was a bit harsh on the author at first, but upon reflection, he did come across as a bit of a know-it-all and a bit reductionist, and I definitely like the way that, you know, she just let him know her emotions. Going back to, she doesn't feel like she's got anything left to lose. So, you know, she doesn't really try to be polite. She just kind of lets him have it, if you were, let out the emotion, and she's not really bothered about the consequences. So yeah, I thought it was an interesting insight to Nora's character.
I like after he leaves and, you know, everyone's like looking at her, she finishes her drink, you know. I like the fact that she's kind of almost, you know, if I was in that situation, I think I'd feel a little bit embarrassed and I'd try to leave as soon as possible. Instead, she just kind of almost zero fucks given, just kind of finishes her drink before even leaving. Like, doesn't even try to leave quickly or do it quickly. Yeah, she's not bothered by what's just happened or any kind of social perception of what's happened, you know.
She'll probably forget about that in 5 minutes' time. Do you know what I mean? She'll step outside and they'll just be... Do you know what I mean? She's just totally not concerned with other people, really, apart from Kevin.
I like the idea in season 2 that she... Yeah. In season 2, she follows him into the bathroom like, have I seen you somewhere before?
Have you stolen my badge?
Yeah.
Yeah. So as she leaves the hotel, she's followed out by a guy who we saw earlier doing something similar to kind of what we heard that Holy Wayne does, because this guy was in an elevator with someone and it literally looked like he was like extracting pain from a crying man. So like I said, it immediately echoes Holy Wayne. And so he then takes her to a building and asks for just, you know, a cool £1,000 just to find out what happened when the author Johansson came to the same place a year ago. So, you know, it's all a bit intriguing at the moment. Ant, did you have any kind of thoughts? What was going on here?
There was absolutely 0% chance I'm following that guy anywhere. I know Nora's got Nora in her state of mind. You know, she wants to investigate the truth, if you like, but, you know, they need a more presentable marketing guy for that organisation. He doesn't look like the most like approachable guy in the world, does he? And you know, to follow them to like a dingy place and transfer money via PayPal, it's all a bit sketchy. But Nora's just like going along with it. I've got nothing left to lose. What about you, Phil? What do you think?
Yeah, no, exactly the same there. I wouldn't follow that man into a bit, you know, I wouldn't have followed him the way she does. I thought that'd be quite dangerous, but again, she clearly doesn't care. She's already been shot in the last 24 hours. She's been arrested by security, taken unknown drugs, you know, completely from strangers, got absolutely rat-ass, sorry. You know, being shot by the dominatrix woman And like, you know, she's
At a romantic encounter.
yeah, exactly. I mean, if that's your kink, that's fine. But I did find it a bit odd that, you know. Anyway, but so I guess I was convinced that she'd go with a strange man to this place because she doesn't care anymore. She's not worried about her own self. But I like how $1,000 to her is meaningless. Same as we see earlier on in the episode when when Angel wants an additional £1,000 for shooting a gun at her. Well, yeah, that's fine. The money doesn't mean anything. She's not fussed at all. Gives her the money. It shows how meaningless it's become.
Well, she's got 3 sets of departure benefit.
Well, that's the other thing. When you think about why Matt wanted the money, which is a bit more of a reason than what she wants the money for, but she doesn't give Matt the money. If that makes sense, like.
Well, sorry, boys. I'm going to have to cut in here because something has just stuck out to me. It's taken almost an hour for this to come up, but there was 2 times where she paid an extra £1,000.
Yes. Fam,
Mind
I've
blown.
literally spent the last 2 hours since rewatching this episode just desperately trying to find how I can bring this up into the episode, and the only thing I could think of was that there were 2 Nora Dursts who represent the 2% departed.
There was 2 vertical lines on the handlebar moustache.
Yes, there were 2 men with a moustache.
That's
clearly,
silly, Phil. Stop ruining a good theory.
Oh, that's it, Phil. Phil, you're making it out to be some sort of joke now, which is obviously not the case.
It's obviously not a joke.
This is serious observation. This is
we're
rigorous.
building artisan sandwiches here. We don't want your out of date bloody mayonnaise splashed everywhere, Phil. Come on.
Mate, I am a gourmet 100% beef burger. You guys are some damp, egg and mayo. That kind of depressing.
Don't sleep on egg and mayo, man. It's an affordable choice.
Fucking hell, what are we talking about here? Anyway, so I'm gonna ask you guys a question here before we get into the quite meaty scene with Holy Wayne. Meaty, not bready. It all links. So my question is, these guys that we're just building up the lore of the podcast because on the sandwich you have 2 slices of bread.
Double decker. No, we don't need any more Sam.
Anyway, so the question is, the guys that are working for Holy... Oh, God, are you guys still laughing?
Sorry.
So these guys that are working for Holy Wayne, my question to you is, do you think they really believe all this shit, or is it just like a targeted marketing campaign? Because obviously people who are, going to this kind of conference would be... Well, you would think potentially going to be people there that were affected and so therefore might be in pain. So the good target market for Holy Wayne. So I'll just throw it out to you guys. Do they believe it, or is it?
I assume they believe they do, because there's enough. Trying to think of the right word now, like profits and conspiracy theories and that sort of thing out there. That there's bound to be few that go along with it. There's clearly been people that have had good experiences and they're going to pass on their word, like the governor or senator in one of the early episodes. Whether the guy taking the PayPal, whether he believes in it, it's not, it's not really made clear, is it? But, perhaps, to work in the creepy apartment with a long hallway and the figure at the end to be on the desk collecting payments over some dodgy laptop and things, It's not exactly like a stellar employer, is it? So either it was a cheap, easy, slightly crooked labour, or it was, they're devout followers.
True believers.
It's a good question. From watching it, I got the impression that they didn't seem that sincere or that keen to kind of spread his message, if that makes sense. They're not talking about Holy Wayne. They just kind of they get because they bring her to Wayne under a false pretense almost, because like, oh, we'll show you how he's a fraud, not kind of let me show you a way to be healed by somebody, if that makes sense. So the fact they brought her there under what seemed like a false pretense made me think they didn't truly believe. But then at the same time, we have seen in the past that Holy Wayne does inspire people. He does surround himself with people who do believe in his powers and what he does. So I was quite conflicted as to whether I believed they believed or not. Like the guy at the laptop, he just kind of said, "Oh yeah, just I can set you up with a PayPal account." You know, it's all about the money for him.
Well, hold on, Phil. I'm going to challenge you on that then. So who have we seen around Holy Wayne and that seems really devout to him?
So, for example, well, you think, for instance, like, oh, now you're pushing. But if you go back to the ranch, for example, I'm desperately trying to remember if it's a man or a woman who, you know, the one who initially speaks to Tom when he gets there.
It's like an older woman, right?
Yeah, it's an older woman, isn't it? And she's quite, what's the word I'm looking for? Yeah, she's quite strict. She's quite in her own, almost as much as any guilty remnant member is. She's quite devout, you know, quite.
Well, no. Again, I'm going to kind of challenge you on it because I think she just basically comes across like, I don't know, quite businesslike, and that, like, you know, these are the rules and blah blah blah. You know, there's nothing to suggest that like she devoutly believes in Holy Wayne.
True, but you get these people. You've got a ranch. So I'm going to go back to the ranch. You've got the people with the guns, for example, you know, who end up losing their lives over Holy Wayne. You see Tom, who goes and picks people up to take them to Holy Wayne. And Tom's clearly not in it for the money because you never see him get paid. He appears to have abandoned his old life and his family without being paid, and I struggle to understand why he'd do that without money, for example.
But to be fair, I think with Tom, we've kind of discussed that, you know, he looks quite uncomfortable with Wayne a lot of the time, and, you know, that you kind of get the impression that he was just like a rebellious teenager who's gone off, and those people died at the ranch, you know, at Wayne's ranch, but they didn't, you know, give up their lives for Wayne. They got killed there rather than like they sacrificed themselves because of Holy Wayne, or, you know, that kind of thing. So,
well, think
I
about.
get what you're saying. I'm just going to slightly disagree with you overall.
And that's fair enough. But I was again thinking about, you know, in the episode where Tom is outside the hospital trying to work out, wondering if he should get on the bus, right? And and he shouts at his phone, and his phone rings. Right? And he answers the phone. You know, at first he's like, "Oh my God, I can't believe this happened." Answers the phone, and then when he realizes it's just like a telemarketer or some silly message thing, he immediately blames Holy Wayne, as if implying that he has the power to do that. If that makes sense, he has the power to mock him or make fun of him in a certain way. And that's when I first thought Tom actually might believe to a certain extent in Holy Wayne's power.
Okay. Yeah, I'm not totally convinced.
I think I agree with both approaches. I think there's definitely probably something there, and it's definitely implied he's got followers, but kind of what you see are more business-like people, you know, with the older woman or the people behind the desk. But you never know. It's certainly implied that he's got a bit of a following, isn't it?
Yeah.
So yeah.
Well, like with so many things in this program, you know, it's 100% open to interpretation, and, you know, the fact that my interpretation is the correct one is, you know, kind of besides the point. Anyway, moving on. So Nora, she then walks through and she finds the man himself, Holy Wayne, of course. He mentions that he doesn't remember the author from last year. Lol. Like, just come on, Wayne. You know, you're meant to be part of the bloody story here. He's not selling it. Just like, who? Anyway, so but he's like, oh yeah, I remember him. Yeah, I took his pain from him. Just like the most generic thing. So immediately you're kind of like doubting Wayne, and you're like, I don't know, is this guy for real? Like, this seems a bit unprofessional almost. But Wayne kind of reads Nora's reactions like a book, to be fair, and he delivers some great analysis on her, to be fair, that it's that she always feels the pain that she's got, and if it starts to slip away, she kind of seeks it out again. So, you know, hence having Angel shoot her, and that kind of thing. But she won't let it kill her, and she won't kill herself because she still has a semblance of hope, as we said earlier, potentially for a return, and that hope is her weakness, and she wants it gone because she doesn't deserve it. But Wayne says that she does deserve it, and he also says, quite interestingly, that he's seen his own kind of imminent death, and he offers to take her pain from her. And I tell you what, he's like super convincing, and that is like some really top-notch analysis on Nora, I must say. And she asks if she'll forget her family if he takes her pain, and I just love this bit of acting where he's just kind of like almost in tears and smiling, and just says never. So like, and just give me your reactions to this Holy Wayne scene.
It was great to see the link with Holy Wayne, because you almost associate him as his own completely separate character arc. So it was great to see the him coming into Nora's storyline in this episode. I mean, it looked dodgy as fuck, didn't it? But I mean, it was a great speech, a great monologue of sorts, and great music as well. It was a really powerful scene. It does make you think if it's the placebo effect or an actual, otherworldly ability that he's got. Obviously, the fact that he's had other people who rave about him doesn't give too much away, because we all know people are susceptible to the placebo effect. Personally, I think that so far from what I've seen, that Wayne probably does have an ability of sorts, although it's not really overly clear exactly what it is. But he doesn't say anything that isn't fairly vague and generic also, right? He doesn't name her husband or say something that he couldn't possibly know unless he had some sort of ability. Everything he says, he kind of he works it through with her. So, there's, at first glance, it definitely looks like perhaps he's just, it's the Barnum effect, isn't it? Just saying vague statements and trying to convince them something. But, I think there's something going on there. Phil, what do you think?
I think it's a placebo effect, and I think it's I think people see what they want to see with it. It's like when Tom doesn't get what he wants from it, you can see Holy Wayne kind of passes it off as, you're not you're all about the suffering and none of the redemption or anything like that. What I did like is the fact he kind of makes a slight reference here to, is it better to have a dead lion or a live dog? I was there like, oh, that's an interesting kind of analogy to make. I don't know if that's a religious one or if that's just something he's come up with, but the fact, we see dogs being shot and killed throughout this program as quite a key plot point. So I thought it was interesting that in that one state it's like, oh, is it better to be, a dead lion or a live dog? So I was curious if there's a link there to a lot of what else is happening in the show, and if what those dogs actually stand for or what they mean.
I love that with this program, where it's kind of like they'll keep talking about the dogs, but even still after all this time, which it's just not clear what, you feel like there is a meaning, but even on my third watch, it's still just so hard to grasp these more kind of abstract things, like exactly what they're going for, and I really like that. But so Ant's kind of touched on it earlier, but I'll just expand on it a little bit. But so, as ever with this program, we're left with a question with no clear answer, and that is, does Holy Wayne actually have some sort of, supernatural abilities, or is he basically just an excellent psychologist? Because, as Ant said, he doesn't say anything specific about her, but he seems to read her situation, perfectly. And he says kind of everything about her, but yet nothing, because, again, as Ant said, no specifics are mentioned at all. And this is very similar to what, real mediums and people who pass themselves off to have this kind of ability do, say these vagaries that, and then people kind of add in their own personal things in there and almost convince themselves that this person has said something specific to them when they haven't. So for me, I'm thinking that Holy Wayne is just like really, really excellent at doing this. But as ever with this program, you can't be sure. There's always something to make you doubt your own opinions, like when he said he'd seen his own death. So what do you reckon, Phil?
I think So I've only just thought about this, but though I think what he's doing is, I don't think there's anything actually there. So I don't think he's got any kind of superpower. I don't think he's healing anyone. But I wonder how convinced of it himself he is, because you see him in the second episode kissing the dead body when no one else was around. Like, he didn't know, well, as far as I'm aware, he didn't know that Tom was observing what he's doing. So I do wonder if he does believe in his own bullshit, if that makes sense. Because I don't think any of it's real. I think it's all psychology. I think it's people seeing what they want to see or feel what they want to feel, you know, with a lot of repressed emotions. But I think he believes in himself, if that makes sense. I think he does believe he's got a power, even though I don't believe he does.
Yeah. He believes his own hype.
Yeah.
What do you reckon, Am?
I think definitely the fact that he says he's seen his own death, the whole situation with the Asian women, the fact that he's kissing the dead body, I would probably disagree with Phil, and I think there's definitely something a bit mysterious going on there, something a bit otherworldly. And whilst he doesn't make it clear to the audience, I think there's something for sure going on.
Maybe we'll find out more as the episodes go on. Who knows? So then we see Nora at the supermarket again, call back to the earlier scene, and she looks decidedly more chirper just in her daily activities, and she's now deviating from her routine that we saw earlier and buying different things, and she finally restocks that kitchen roll. So, like I say, Nora seems to, have made a kind of marked improvement in getting away from that kind of monotony. So, Phil, what did you have anything to kind of add to that?
Yeah, I liked how to me, it almost seems like she's just moved on completely. You know, she smiles at the cashier. Oh, do you have a rewards card with us? Yes, I do. Smiles at the cashier. I think it's one of the few times the only time we really see a smile in this episode, other than at Kevin earlier on. Also, she's going around the house, she's making changes, but none of it seems significant to her. There's no... for instance, when she replaces the kitchen roll, it's not like there's even a moment of her even really thinking about what she's doing. I almost expected her to look at it, have maybe a second's thought about it and what it means, and then do it as if it's some kind of big breakthrough. But she does it almost, to me, it seemed offhanded, not really interested, like it's not significant.
It's almost like she snapped out of it, isn't it?
Yeah, it's like she snapped out of it a bit. And also, I almost wondered if she'd perhaps forgot, and I'll come back onto that in a moment when we get to the last scene. But the other thing I was curious about here is you have a voicemail in the background of Matt, just saying, talking about what he's done, and he's made some changes, I think is the word he said about himself, and I'd love to know what those changes are. I almost wonder if it's a bit of a foreshadowing of what's happening in what will happen in another episode. Oh, and I'm really looking forward. And it's what I love about this program is today. All I've had so far in this program is questions. I've had no answers, just questions. And you know what?
So true.
I love it. I absolutely love it. I'm not even getting frustrated at the fact I know potentially less now than I did in the first episode, if that makes sense. And you know what? I love it. I'm fine with it.
I think it's because there's so many TV shows that are fairly generic, and you kind of spoon-fed, and it's all a bit easy, and you can kind of predict what's going to happen. And this is so unpredictable. It's like episode from episode, there's new stuff coming up, and that's what makes it great. So I definitely agree, Phil. If okay, my thought on this is that she snapped out of it. Holy Wayne's Hilda, if you like, whether actually or just in her mind, placebo effect. But also the fact that the mom in the playground notices that Nora's not there is just confirmation that she's almost left the past behind and is just moving on with her life.
Yeah, absolutely. So then we come to undoubtedly the best scene in the episode. Nora gets a knock at the door Oh, and it's sexy ass Kevin, man. Turns up, full uniform, rocking them shades. I mean, come on, man. He knows exactly what he's doing. No woman or man or sound stand him when he turns up like that.
I'm glad you read that.
He
out.
asks.
I slipped that in, wondering if you'd notice.
So he asks her out, and of course she says yes. I mean, come on, just fucking look at him. Don't act like you wouldn't as well. And he warns her that he's a mess, but she says, "Yeah, it's okay. I am too." And did you find Kevin particularly sexually attractive in this scene?
The Ray-Ban website, the analyst must have seen a pure spike on those gold rims on their web pages after the release of season 1. No, I mean, it's interesting that obviously they know each other has just got divorced because they saw each other at the courtroom, and quite a lot of the time when you're young, perhaps when you're younger, maybe there's some games going on, but the fact is they still barely know each other, but they've got experience in the divorce and they haven't got times for games, and they're just being open with each other. Can you imagine when you were, say, 21, Phil, meeting a girl and saying, "Oh, I'm a mess"? It just wouldn't happen, would it? But like maybe it's the sunglasses and you can get away with it. But I just thought it was a nice touch.
Yeah.
But this is the best and most direct we've seen Kevin be in the whole series. Usually he's hiding things from Jill or whatever, but here he's just open and it's quite refreshing.
I don't know. He was pretty direct when he was asking for those shirts, wasn't he? Open the door.
That is true. Sorry. By the way, as I was saying to Ant then about did you find Kevin sexy? I was thinking about Dwight and Andy in The Office when Erin first comes into it, and Dwight's like, "And a bit of blood rushed to my penis, and I'm guessing a bit rushed to yours too."
I'm picturing, when he's like there with Jim trying to see if he's getting aroused by the other woman. Oh no, fell over and grabbing him by the crotch. Would you say this is particularly engorged?
There's no need to check. We know what the answer is. Anyway, so the last scene now, so we see Nora, she's conducting another one of these departure benefit interviews, and we actually see question 121, which is, in your opinion, do you believe that the departed is now in a better place? And the person that she's interviewing says no, for the first one ever. And it's suggested earlier in the episode, as I said earlier on in our episode, that maybe people say yes to Nora all the time previously because she may mention her situation to them and they kind of empathise with her even more because she's lost 3 people. And we don't know for sure if she does mention it or not, despite her saying she doesn't. Maybe she doesn't actually mention it, but she's wearing her pain quite obviously for them to see, or something like that, which would be of course completely understandable. But now Holy Wayne has taken it from her and she seems a bit more cold and professional as she's giving these interviews, and so she gets a potentially real answer from this client, I suppose. That's just a bit of my analysis in there. But who knows? It could all just be a coincidence, and that's the beauty of this show. It could be everything, that could be linked into everything we've talked about in this episode: her identity, her struggles, or it could be nothing, and it could just be a coincidence, and that she was always going to get a no on this one. And I really like that about this program. So, either of you guys got anything to add on this final scene?
Yeah, it was interesting to see her different demeanour, wasn't it? And yeah, just to echo your point, Sam, what I really like when this show shows things that aren't so black and white, and we've discussed it a lot, haven't we? But whether she actually is healed properly through something mystical, or she just believes she's healed and that's doing the trick. So yeah, what about you, Phil? What I couldn't tell is a very brief at the end of the
interview, or as she's asked that question, after you asked question 121, for me there seems to be like a very brief flash, and I can't tell if it's empathy or what the emotion is, or if it's even as if she's trying to remember what she put, as if she's forgotten. You know, like as if she's trying to remember like a forgotten memory or something, or a half-remembered memory. It was very... I know it's because it's such a very brief moment. And I think it's almost very well acted because I struggle to tell what it is. But there did just seem, after 121, a little something. And I initially put it down to, I wonder if she has actually forgotten what's happened to a certain extent, or no longer relates to it in the same way. But the key impression I got was that she was trying to remember something. Was how I perceived it initially. And I wonder if she has almost forgotten, despite what Holy Wayne said, or doesn't really relate to what's happened anymore.
Yeah, no, that is an interesting interpretation. It's not quite what I got from it, but again, that is the beauty of this episode. Mm-hmm. So that does it for the synopsis of episode 6, Guests. So our overall impressions is what we'll just close out this episode on. So I'll give mine first. So again, it's just another excellent episode. It doesn't try and do any heavy lifting with the world building or kind of like the overall plot, say with the Guilty Remnant and that kind of thing. But it's another excellent character study episode. This is Nora's episode, as episode 3 was Matt's, and these are really standout episodes for me. And I must say, on both viewings, it absolutely flew by. Like, it kind of got towards the end of the episode, and I was like, really? It feels like it's only been on for 10 minutes, and I think that just really shows how sublime this program is. So yeah, loved it. What do you reckon, Phil?
Yeah.
He wasn't asking the lettuce. Yeah, it was a fantastic episode. Absolutely loved it. Such great character development. Even though, the story's not really progressed, I've had no more information of what's going on. It's just, it flew by, as you've said, and I loved it both times. And I can't wait to see what happens next. I can't wait to see what where the relationship goes with Kevin. I can't wait to see what happens with Matt. Just fantastic, all round fantastic episode.
And
to be honest, Phil, you're calling me a lettuce, and all you said was great episode. I can't wait to see what happens next, which is what I said earlier, and was roundly marked. So I'm going to come up with an actual meaty point for you.
All right, 2 cc's thick juicy.
He's done you there, Phil.
You know what? That's going to have to get cut.
Just on the title of the episode, being guest, and it can refer to several things, can't it? It can be Angel coming around, obviously being the guest there, Nora's status at the conference, Nora turning up to Holy Wayne's establishment, maybe Holy Wayne being there himself as a guest. Could perhaps refer to Kevin and Nora's fairly early stage relationship, where they feel like they're they're not quite so comfortable with each other, so perhaps there's a connection there with being a guest. And then also Nora doing the benefit interviews as a guest. I mean, it's probably a bit of a stretch that all of those things are relevant, but definitely the fact that Angel came round and the conference being some of the key points there. And what I like with this show, quite similar to Breaking Bad, really, I like the titles of the episodes, apart from the 2 boats and a helicopter. I have to think about that then. But there's multiple ways to interpret them. So yeah, great episode, Phil. Can't wait to see what happens.
I think that's pretty much the best place to leave it. That's, if you take anything from this podcast, it's that great episode. Can't wait to see what happens next. Even scene by scene, can't wait to see what happens next.
There's not really a bad scene in that episode, is there? And whilst it might appear that we all hate each other, actually we'll get on all really well, so don't worry about that, guys.
I mean...
And I think, the listeners, as well as us, for next week's episode, they can't wait to see what we'll do next. So, as always, thank you very much for tuning in, and we'll be back next week for episode 7. Thanks a lot, everyone, and we'll see you all next week. Goodbye.
Bye, guys. Can't wait to see what happens next.
And the meat signs there.
Oh. Hi guys, hope the talk of thick, juicy burgers has got you hungry for more of our episodes. If you have any thoughts or comments, or just want to give us a shout out, feel free to contact us on our email, sapsreview@gmail.com, or hit us up on Twitter @sapspodcast. See you next week.